Here's something I was thinking about this morning that I do personally a lot of the time, and I think it's the same thing in business and e-commerce, is that if you have a problem that you feel is hard, like it's a hard problem and it's causing you stress, you will look for a hard solution for it, whereas there might be an easy fix. And so stop trying to fix a problem with a hard fix that can be fixed easily just because it's hard. And like that is typical of e-commerce. We see in e-commerce because obviously we're humans and humans run e-commerce. So if you've got a recruitment problem, you're probably looking for a hard solution, whereas there might be an easy solution. And that easy solution might be Good morning, Ian. How are you?
Good afternoon. It's been a while, Mark. You've been on holidays.
Yeah, went to Sydney for a week, having a look at the universities for my son. It was lovely. Lot nicer weather than Auckland.
Weather. There it is.
I actually found out that
Well, welcome back.
Sydney's actually further away from the equator than Auckland is, but because it's closer to because it's like on land, it's warmer. So Auckland should be warmer, but it's not. So
yeah,
that was interesting. A little fact there for you.
Nice. Listen,
Anyway,
well, we had a week off, obviously.
Yeah.
But I've got to do a little.
You
shout
didn't
out,
really,
actually.
did we? We didn't, because you did a podcast with Chloe Thomas.
Oh,
so
I did.
You thought,
Yes, I did.
yeah.
Yeah, you're right. So Also, when I was off for with holiday and I had to do a podcast. You know, whereas you're on holiday, you don't have to do a podcast.
Well
What's
done.
that about?
You get 10 points.
Boundaries. You've got better boundaries.
I don't think I could.
It's because I have no one else to talk to, so that's why I do
Yeah.
a podcast still. Otherwise, I'm
True.
surrounded by like my 3 kids.
It's just to be honest, your holidays aren't really holidays, are they? 3 screaming children.
I've got 3 girls.
Yeah.
I've got 3 girls. 13, 12, and 4. And then me. Yeah, it's good. We have a laugh. It's good fun. But I've got a shout out to do actually, Mark,
go
because
for it.
to Luke, who from Lawn Care. Let me actually just get his business, because I was in David Lloyd. I was at the gym, and Luke came up to me. Luke Taylor from Sew and Mo came up to me, and he said, "Are you Ian Hammersley?" I was like, "Yes, I am. I am Ian Hammersley." He's like, "What, are you from the Hammersley brothers?" I was like, "Yes." I'm a big fan, and he was a big fan because he knew that we talked about the weather, so we made the little. I do appreciate your weather forecasts joke as well, which made me realise. Anyway, it's a big shout out to Luke. I did say to Luke, this is the first time that anyone's ever recognised me from the podcast. But
I think
this
we've
moment
only
has
recently
come.
just started doing video, though, haven't we? So people wouldn't.
No one knows our
wouldn't have seen us
face.
before.
Yeah.
So
anyway, well, thank you. Shout out.
210 episodes or something
200
like that.
people has ever listened to our entire podcast. That's a lot.
Oh, but I think 200 episodes is quite a lot of episodes if you think about it.
Well, it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Just starting
Yeah.
out. Anyway, let's talk about what we want to talk about today. And I think this came from a discussion around, well, obviously we're always talking to people and we're always talking to e-commerce sites. And I think our frustration with some of the conversations we've been having recently was let's go back to the basics. It's like, let's have the conversation about the basics. So we want to kind of have a podcast about getting the basics right, because I think a lot of the time we think that, people listen to the podcast or we're working with people and they've got the basics sorted out. And you can get very far in e-commerce without actually understanding some of the basics. And you can kind of fall into success and then kind of find yourself selling and then kind of not really know exactly where you are. And that's where you get stuck, because you don't really know, what's actually happening. So let's go through some of the basics, getting the basics right. Some of the things we've seen that people aren't doing or don't know. And like the things that I just think, well, I wouldn't be able to run this e-commerce business without knowing these few things. Otherwise, what's actually going to happen?
Yeah,
So, do
and I
you want
think
to
I
lead
just
into that, Ian?
yeah, I'll just lead into well my own thoughts on that one. And I mean that the market at the moment, it's fine. There's some great growth, some great e-commerce businesses that are growing. So we're end of April at the moment, but it's some great growth. And there's some businesses still who this is like the reset year after the boom of COVID. This is like the normal year where normal seasonality is coming in. And I think there's a few that are not they're growing, but they're not growing at the same rate that they have been growing, and they start to question everything. So there was a quote that somebody gave me that I can't remember, but it basically said that growth, when you're growing, it masks a multitude of sins. You don't look at anything that you're not doing right. You just accept the growth. You accept it, but
Mm-hmm.
when you're not growing as quick, you start to question everything. And um, and you can run yourself in circles, looking at everything, um, and that's when you and I will go, well, surely you're going to look at this, these fundamental things, you're going to get those right, and it is very interesting, and I suppose it's just because you and I have looked at so many e-commerce brands for so long, looking at probably 6 or 7 e-commerce analytics a day, every day for the last probably 20 years. You sort of get this very, what's common sense to you, it is only based on, what you know. And yeah, and I think there was a few sort of rookie errors happening, with some fairly large e-com businesses. And I think now, in the time that we're in, we're 2024, and some businesses are, seeing the competitions increase, cost per clicks increasing, the share of wallet is, a little bit more competitive. It's very important to get the roadmap, to get the project plan, to get the right things, bulleted list of what you're going to do. And there was a couple of businesses. There was one particular one who was chatting to the other week, and they were pretty flat growth, and they were starting to talk about, and they'd grown quite well, and we just met them, and and they were obsessed with the site, making sure that the website was really quick, and they were upset. There was like certain little glitches on the website that weren't amazing. The website was working, but they were like, oh, the checkout's little bit clunky, and we think that's so. And then I said, okay, well, right, what's your CAC? What's your cost of acquisition? How much can you pay to recruit a customer? So we don't know. I said, right, what do you mean you don't know? Well, we just have a fixed budget. We have a marketing budget that's like £15,000 a month, and that seems about right. I was like, oh my, right. So, and I basically said, unless you know how much you can pay to recruit a new customer, you are literally blind. Like you don't they don't know how much they were paying to recruit. They don't know how much their budget was going on new customers. They just had a total budget. They didn't know how much customers was worth on their first purchase, and they didn't know how much they were worth over a lifetime. And I just thought, if it was my business, until I knew the answer to that question, how much I could pay to recruit a new customer, um, until I knew that, I wouldn't do anything else other than get that right. I'd lock myself in the room. I wouldn't come out until I'd figured out what it was, what my margin was, and what my basic lifetime customer value. Because you basically don't know how far you can grow. They might have been able to triple their ad budget profitably, and go from there. So that was one. You want to add anything to that before I move on to my next rookie mistake?
It's just like marketing is an investment, isn't it? It's like getting a mortgage, and if you don't know how much you can pay a month and how much you can actually put down, you don't know how big a house you can get, and therefore if you don't know, if you can't, it's basically like trying to go and buy a house without looking at your bank account or understanding how much you earn, and then you're going, well, actually, I think I can afford a flat, but you might be, you might be in a position to actually afford a much bigger house and grow much faster and do all sorts of things. And so I think unless you can answer those two questions, you can't really run the business how it is actually supposed to be run, because you don't know the answers to those. And like ultimately, I think maybe we're misleading people a little bit by saying, oh, like maybe your CAC is really low and you can be scaling a lot higher. But sometimes you'll find that and this happens as soon as you look at your CAC, you realize that you're recruiting customers and you can't afford to recruit them. We've certainly seen that in a couple of cases where businesses have they've gone and got some funding, maybe from a crowdfunding thing, and they've just gone and bought customers regardless of the cost, and then kind of run out of that money, and then come out that on the other side of it and go, why aren't we making any money? And it's like, well, why can't we recruit? And it's like, well, you can't recruit at 0.5 ROAS forever, because it's basically like say you got a butcher shop and someone's saying, can I have some sausages? And you go, here's your sausages, and you giving them £5 as well. It's basically like losing money on every customer. So
and sometimes it
fundamentally,
takes a
you've got to
while.
understand where you are.
Sorry to interrupt you, but I'm just going to overtalk you, like I do. Just go for it. But I think there's still a lot of emotional decisions being made in an e-com business. The businesses that we talk to, there's still a lot of emotion there, which is fine. We need emotion to drive us to be inspired and to have the determination and resilience. But we have to be careful if we listen to it, because you can. I mean, particularly on making decisions of what work to do and what to pay to recruit a customer. And the other analogy that I've talked about a few times, which sort of I think I personally quite like, is if e-commerce business was a physical shop on the high street, first thing you would do is you decide when your opening hours are. When we're going to open. Should we open on a Saturday and a Sunday? Should we open for late night shopping? When's our opening hours? And obviously you decide how long to open based on how much revenue you were getting and how much the cost was. So what the profit was. So should we open on a Saturday and Sunday would be based on, how much traffic's there? How much business are we going to get? How many shoppers are going to come in versus what the cost is to staff it? And you'd make the simple decision. Well, it is worth opening on a Saturday, but not on a Sunday, for example, because we haven't got enough revenue coming through. It's not worth it. That's the first decision that you'd be making, and that is the basic. A lot of e-commerce businesses don't know that. This one I was chatting to the other day, they've been going for probably about 10 years. This e-com company, and they still didn't know how much they could pay to recruit a new customer, which I thought was crazy. It really was.
Well, if you don't, basically, let's say you find out you can recruit a customer at, I don't know, $100 a customer, whatever it is, and you're currently recruiting customers for $120, then you know what the target is. You know exactly where you've got to be and what you've got to do in order to scale the business, and like. It then changes your focus to actually answer the right questions, to say, well, is that actually going to get me to that level? Is that going to change the business? And I think that, you'll see, that particularly happens when a new e-commerce manager comes into the business. We've done this before. We've had e-commerce sites, we've employed e-commerce managers, and they come in with a kind of list of things that they want to do that they've seen work at their previous company that they've worked at. And they'll go, oh, we've got to change all this to do this. And it's like, well, yes, that might work, but that might have worked just for your previous e-commerce business for a start. It's probably not a playbook for every business you're going to work in. And also, fundamentally, what was the challenge you had at that other business and what's the challenge you got at this business? Because otherwise what happens is, and you see this everywhere, you'll get like a smorgasbord of shiny things that everybody wants to do. And like there's pet peeves that people have about e-commerce sites, because if you are looking at the business, you go, well, I found the checkout bit annoying, so I'm going to change that. Or I don't really like the way this looks. And I think that one of the biggest, without knowing what you're doing with from a fundamental kind of like KPI point of view, you are going to try and change the website to make it better for yourself, even though you are not the customer. And you are very different to the customer in that you have seen that website 10 times a day because it's your website, whereas a customer is seeing it for the first time ever. And like, I think that's another mistake, is that trying to recreate the wheel all the time in your creative because you've been around it so long. Whereas let's say you're selling other people's products, it's, you know, it's about price, availability, and trust. And you've been in the business such a long time that maybe they're boring to you because you're like, oh, surely it must be something else. Maybe we could do something else, and maybe we could do some other marketing things. But it's like, no, the business is fundamental. The fundamental business is the same. It stays the same. Yes, it's not that exciting, but that's what it is. And I think one of the things I wrote down that people do wrong is that the creative they try and create, they kind of like, they'll go an agency hop and try and get new creative and try and kind of recreate the creative. Whereas actually 99% of the time that doesn't work. And you'll find that the creative that works is an echo of the creative that has worked before. It's very unusual for you to be able to go and massively upscale your creative to kind of have this epiphany moment where it's completely different. If you've had success, it will be an echo of it.
Yeah, and the reason why it's dangerous to keep changing things fundamentally, because you're bored of it as a business owner. So you assume that everybody else is that most of the creative is there to recruit new customers. So because they're new, it's the first time they've seen it, so it's fresh to them. And yes, of course, you have to tweak things, and you have to, you know, make sure things, you know, feel fresh. But fundamentally, the core is the same, often the same emotion. And actually, I tell you one thing. It reminds me of the, you know, when we did the meta positioning work with the men's tailoring company. Like, you know, that they'd spent, I don't know, 10 years trying to get meta working, and they just couldn't really scale it, but they never really got a good ROAS on it. They couldn't really do it. And they were overcomplicating it. You know, the creative was trying to be really, really creative. And actually it came down to, no, it's not about that. It's about one particular category. It's shirts, you know, for example, it was shirts. And it was a picture of a shirt, not on a man, just a shirt on a plain background, with a very good positioning, quality testimonial, and a strong offer, and that worked. You know, even a shirt with a man in it didn't work. You know, because you think, oh, they're sounding like Viagra or Just for Men, or, you know, it's a bloody shirt. Anyway, I think what we're saying, because we're going to go through a few examples, is unless you know the fundamentals and you can answer, and the fundamentals, in my opinion, are how much can we afford to recruit a new customer for, and what is our current ad performance giving us in terms of new customers, and are we at that threshold? You know, you shouldn't do anything else until you can answer that one. And then it comes to some other basics. Like, there's I had another call this morning, actually, with an American apparel business, clothing, and men's and women's, and you know, there's no email cat. Like, I think the Klaviyo, the pop up had gone on the site, and there's no email capture at all. And, you know, I think when we looked at it, it's like they're getting like 1.6% of all emails as a percentage of traffic. And like we always say, okay, the goal is 10. And it's like, do something about that. Like, you're driving all this traffic, you're paying loads of money on ads, and you're talking about product margin and offer architecture and all sorts of things. Yet you've only got 1.7% of all traffic's email address, and that includes people who are placing orders. So it's like you're literally leaving money on the table because they haven't got figured out their email capture. And it's like, get that done, because that's something you can do now, like this week, and that's going to have immediate impact. Yeah, so there was another conversation I had this morning, and it was an American fashion business selling women's clothing, and I was like, we were chatting to them about, and they're performing okay. It's not fantastic, but doing all right. And we're just looking at some of like the basics, fundamentals, and it's like, where's your email capture? In fact, conversation happened twice today actually. What's your email capture? What's your percentage of email that you're capturing over traffic? Because we always say the benchmark 10%, and it was like 1.77% the amount of emails they're capturing. It's like really, really low. It's quite a social business. They're getting lots of traffic coming from Instagram, and of course, there you get more window shoppers. So you really have to go for email and build your audience rather than try and go for the sale. So it's like, get that done. Like, stop faffing around with anything. You can do that this week, and you can go and sort out your data email capture. You can do competitions, pop-ups. You can do your monetary offers, your potential. Go and do that now, because it's literally going to cost you nothing, yet have quite a powerful impact on your ROAS. So it's simple, it's easy, it's there. Why are you not doing it? To be honest, there's nothing in my mind that is more important than that. So whatever you do that isn't that in the next 7 days is going to be a poor investment decision. Get the fundamentals.
Well, look at one of our own businesses. Look at one of our own businesses, the one that sells bedding. I mean, we haven't had any stock, so that's obviously a fundamental problem. We haven't had any white sheets, which has been a bit of a pain. But we get the white sheets in, and then we're spending a certain amount on Google. We haven't been sending any emails, so it's been limiting what we've been spending. But because we've had 10% data capture rate, as soon as we get that stock in and we send the email, the ROAS goes up. The recruitment ROAS goes up. I can put the budget up again, and we can start growing again. It's like, if I hadn't had that, it'd be a completely different business. And if you ask that business you were talking to, well, when do you get most of your sales? And they go, oh, when we've got a good email offer going out. And it's like, well, why wouldn't you want to augment that, amplify that? You're only going to make that better by capturing more email addresses.
Yeah.
And I think it's because the emails are captured another time, and then the email sent out maybe a couple of weeks later, that connection is not really necessarily made. But it's like, you've got to harvest. You can only harvest what you've sown. If you're not planting the seeds, you're not gonna get the not gonna get harvest. So if you've got a low data capture rate, it's really going to affect your business, your ability to kind of ramp that spend up, to kind of keep that ROAS up, because you haven't got the second bite of the cherry. And I think a lot of people on our programs get it now, but still I think a few people don't, and I think that certainly when we talk to a lot of people who come in the door for the first time and you ask them what the data capture rate is, they don't know the answer to the question.
Yeah.
And that's silly, because it's just a fundamental one, particularly with any business really. Because I think the mistake is that people think that email is all about repeat business, whereas actually a lot about first-time customers. And here's something I was thinking about this morning that I do personally a lot of the time, and I think it's the same thing in business and e-commerce, is that if you have a problem that you feel is hard, like it's a hard problem and it's causing you stress, you will look for a hard solution for it, whereas there might be an easy fix. And so stop trying to fix a problem with a hard fix that can be fixed easily just because it's hard. And like, that is typical of e-commerce. We see in e-commerce, because obviously we're humans and humans run e-commerce. So if you've got a recruitment problem, you're probably looking for a hard solution, whereas there might be an easy solution. And that easy solution might be increase your data capture rate. And it's like, well, how do you do that? And it's like, well, you just split test the pop-ups. You just have different things. We've done whole podcasts on how to increase your email data capture rate, and obviously we teach it in the programs. But like, there's usually easy fixes, and I think that's, I don't know, I think we're quite well known for cutting through the BS and talking about the easy fixes that are in place. And I think that, like, when I listen to other people talking, I think we always like podcasts particularly. It's always trying to have the new thing, the shiny new thing, the shiny new thing. What do we want to talk about? What's coming out? Like, there's a new Facebook campaign type or a new thing, and it's gonna, like, everybody's got to jump on it straight away. And it's like, well, yes, but only if that's going to get you to the recruitment results you want. And the question should be, if I doubled my ad spend today, what would my customer recruitment cost be, and where does it need to be? And if I can't get it to where I want it to be, why can't I get it to, and what things are going to help that? Because I think there's, you see these even at small level in the 20K core program. They'll get to $10,000 a month, and then they'll go, oh, I've got Google ads, I need to do Facebook ads, I need to do Pinterest, I need to do TikTok. And it's like, well, why? Because it's not like, and a lot of these are American sites. Like, in America, they're spending a couple of grand on Google ads. There's no way they're just like a drop of orange cordial in an ocean. No one can taste you. It's completely, it's too early to diversify.
It's a big distraction as well, and another complication if you try and add another channel in too soon. I wouldn't bother doing unless I was doing like $1 million a year. I wouldn't even look at any other channel really. I think I'd just go and nominate one.
Also
maybe
look at the bedding business, right? The bedding business is, I don't know, doing $3 million, $4 million ish run rate kind of style. That size business, if you go and look at those businesses that we work with, they've got 5 staff, lots of people running around, agencies, all that kind of stuff. And if you looked at inside ours, you've got like one guy, a dispatcher, and that's about it. And there's nothing else there. There's nothing in that business really, apart from support, that's happening. And I think that as you get bigger, you tend to think you need to add more complexity to the business. And you've just got to make sure that the complexity you're adding to the business actually helps you grow, rather than kind of having a business that you feel should look like that. So there's a metaphor or an example I would use that I've seen is that, I've employed a lot of people over my time, and I would promote someone to be a manager, and then because they were a manager, they would go and get themselves a fancy car. And it would, because in their mind, that's what a manager would drive. It doesn't necessarily mean that I'd promoted them enough for them to afford that car, but they'd gone and done it because that was the lifestyle they thought a manager would have. And so you see that a lot. People kind of doing things because they visualize what that business is going to look like, rather than what their actual business needs to look like. And so you can keep adding complexity, and you'll see this in a lot of places. And someone I'm thinking about, it's a certain lady that she's very busy doing all of the things, and yet I bet you she could drop half of those and grow much, much faster if she just leaned into the fundamentals. And it's very difficult to know if you're doing that. But you have to be very careful when you add new things that they actually make a difference, because otherwise you'll end up adding these things and layers of these things in your business. You'll get incredibly busy, but you won't actually grow. And I think coming back to the fundamentals and having that conversation is probably a reset that a lot of people need to have.
Well, thank you for your nice summary there, Mark. I completely agree. I know, I completely agree. It is a case of doing the basics right, and also just looking at the obvious things. I mean, so I was working with a business last week that's a big gardening business selling plants online, and I was like, right, I want to see your roadmap. I want to see what you're doing. So we went through the targets, and they were on one of the programs. I want to see your roadmap, and I was like, on the roadmap, it was all very hardcore technical, big integrations, um, some sort of like integration into some software that I don't know. I couldn't even describe what it was, but it was like a big thing. It was going to take months, months to do. Yet on their site, like on the homepage, you couldn't even click on the main homepage banner. It wasn't even clickable. Um, and it's like, what do you do? Like, what? That's literally going to take you 30 seconds to make that whole homepage banner clickable. Yet you're not going to do that for the next 3 months because you're literally your entire resources are going to be swallowed up by this really deep technical integration project. So, like, I just thought, wow, it's so obvious. It's so obvious. I think just look at. I think basically the question I always say, and this is quite useful. I think whenever I go into an e-commerce business, I say, okay, if Mark and I were starting this e-commerce business today for fresh, and we had no history to worry about and no decisions, this is what we would do. We would price it up. We'd have a 6% margin. We'd add a 20% buffer. We'd price it up so we had a little bit of a recruitment deal. We had a retention deal. We'd go aggressive on the email capture, and we'd launch it in that simple way. And I think just everybody who's listening to this, just think if we were starting this e-commerce brand today for the first time, what would we do? And listen to what you say. And how you'd price it, and how you would, what margin you'd be building in, and what offer architecture you might be going into, and what deals and bundles you would do, and just what you would stock and what you wouldn't stock, what you might pull out of your shopping feed, what you would want to have had more stuff. Like, just think about it. Just ask yourself that question. We started it again, fresh. How would we run it? And that's probably the right strategy.
I think also, as you were talking, I think that one thing that businesses need to know is if you could sell one of your products or a category of products, which one would it be and why? Awesome.
Cool.
Thank you very much, Ian.
Okay, Mark. Welcome back.
Speak to you next week.
Cheerio.
Cheers.